Jerkovic, pressure, goes to the end zone, and that ball, Zay Flowers catches for a touchdown.
Green, Ritter taking a shot downfield, Pierce on the other end, trick or treat, Bearcats, touchdown!
Still Halloween, baby.
You are listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
And welcome everybody to The Review. John Wilkerson here, John Wood there, John Nelson there. Phil Cantor can't join us this week, so you get three Johns, no waiting. So enjoy the as we go back and talk about the week that was in college football.
Let's hope the plumbing works with three Johns, no waiting. That's all I can say.
Wear your mask.
Always have a good plumber in your Rolodex.
Yes.
That's old school. Maybe that should be on your iPhone or Android. And speaking of your iPhone and Android, we hope you have the OSG app on your device as well, so you can hear our podcasts. And obviously we've got the Twitter page at OSG Sports. And yes, there it is. And also on Facebook and the onlinesportsguys.com, where you can read Phil Cantor's musings. Okay, now I've got all that out of the way.
Basically, we're everywhere. Just do a search for us, and you'll find us everywhere.
Basically, yes.
We're all over the world. Okay, so let's start talking about games. And obviously, as you look at the on this Sunday, as we tape this, it's Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and Notre Dame, your top four. But Clemson had the orange scared out of them in the first half against
That's
Boston
the only thing
College.
that gets scared out of them there, sir.
I mean, the Tiger Paws weren't looking so good in the first half against Boston College.
So here's BC now after the fake and the conversion, pulling them to the end zone. Wow! What a score!
And what an effort by BC in that first half. Phil Jerkovic was all over the place, making plays all over the field in that first half. Big play after big play was happening for Boston College. And guys, when you saw the halftime score, did you think the world was, well, the world's already upside down because of everything, but did you think maybe it was right side up now?
It's like the old Bizarro World sketch from Saturday Night Live with Tim Kazurinsky, where it's like, me thirsty, me have a long drink of sand, one of those things. That was the only thing that popped into my head was, okay, so that wasn't the intended result at the break. But J-Dub, obviously, we look at two halves, and I think it just took a while for DJ Uiagalelei to get warmed up.
When I watched that first half, it's the first chance I had to see the Eagles play this year. And I'm like, wow, Jeff Hafley has really got this team playing. I mean, they came prepared. They had that really good fourth down fake field goal with Tessitore running up underneath the center to draw Clemson off for a 4th and 2. It was a really good half for Boston College. That tight end Long for Boston College is really, really good. I think he leads the nation in catches from a tight end. But then, I started thinking to myself, Trevor Lawrence this important to this offense? I'm like, Dabo Swinney's got kind of a program going on in Clemson. Is Uiagalelei going to catch on? And then his halftime speech must have been fire, because Uiagalelei and Travis Etienne came out just hitting on all cylinders. The defense stepped up, got a safety. Oh yeah, Clemson's going to be just fine.
Well, I think I texted you guys at halftime saying that Dabo Swinney is going to be reading the fire and brimstone at halftime, which I'm sure he did, because that sideline looked in disarray going into the halftime locker room. But to me, when Travis Etienne, remember, they put him out there to receive the second half kickoff. When he ran it out to the 45 and put Clemson in great field position, and then they used Etienne quite a bit in that third quarter to kind of calm the nerves, and Clemson became Clemson again. I think it was that return that really got everybody back focused, coupled with whatever was said in the locker room. But you realize, though, there was a punt return for a touchdown by Boston College, I believe in the first half, that was called back because of a clipping or an illegal block. Had that stood, we'd be talking about an upset.
But then you also look at the fumble from Etienne on the goal line. It's like he does not fumble. I think he's got like 2 fumbles in the last 3 games. Had that not happened, I mean, that was a 14-point swing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was.
a whole bunch of woulda, coulda, shouldas in that game.
Travis finishes 20 for 84 with a touchdown, and Uiagalelei 30 of 41 by the time the day was over, 342 and 2. And so, yeah, everybody that I was looking at on social media was sitting there wondering if next week Clemson and Notre Dame, and it's like the scene with Macaulay Culkin up and down the hallway in Home Alone. And I'm like, no, calm down. Everything's going to be fine if you're a Clemson fan. It just took a while for everything to get all revved up. And the thing is that of those 30 completions, Travis Etienne caught 7 of them for 140 and a score, Jada.
And that was what I was going to say. One of my friends was like, man, Etienne only had 80 yards on the ground against the Eagles. Man, Notre Dame's going to crush him. I'm like, $140 in the air, guys. Etienne is going to be a problem either behind between the tackles or out on the slot. I mean, he's just somebody that is a matchup nightmare. And you think that with a Uiagalelei back there, they would focus on him. If that happens, Etienne's going to run wild because Book is not a good enough quarterback to be able to pull Notre Dame out of a hole if they get down early against Clemson.
Since we're kind of jumping the gun here and talking about next week's matchup, Notre Dame did get by Georgia Tech. Not get by, but they crushed them.
Well, I think early
that.
On, my gut was telling me early on that I think they were looking ahead a little bit when it was 17-7, and when it was 7-7, and Georgia Tech had that scoop and score back the other way. I thought that it took a while for them to realize, okay, we're in a bit of a game here, and then they finally put the pedal down.
Yeah, and that's the problem from when you're playing a subpar team that basically got Madden rolled a couple weeks ago by the team you're playing next week. You're thinking Clemson, and as a player, it's beaten to our heads to you play the game in front of you because any given Saturday that anybody can get beat unless you're Kansas. But at the same time, you can't afford to look past because then you're going to get somebody like a decent team. Georgia Tech isn't bad. But I agree with Nelson there. I think that it took a gut check, and I think they're going to be fine. I still think Clemson's going to win by at least 3 touchdowns, but I think that Notre Dame's going to give them a fight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a much closer game than that.
Yeah.
You're talking about 2 defenses here that are top 15 in every category, especially against the run. Both are awesome against the run. So to me, the key is Travis Etienne, the fact that he can catch in the flat and get yards after the catch. He's that versatile, and they're going to need that big playability. I'm not worried about DJ Uiagalelei at all, even though he's going into the pit of Notre Dame Stadium. It's not going to be a full house because of COVID restrictions, which to me is sad because this game would have been like the Georgia game was a few years ago, crowd-wise. It would have been electric. And that, to me, puts Clemson on top for me, is the versatility of Travis Etienne. But you got 2 elite defenses going at each other in that matchup.
But you think about this, though. I mean, I look at, as an offensive lineman, I look at running backs and I look at quarterbacks when it comes to these types of even defensive matchups. Clemson's defense is pro style. I mean, they're going to get after you. They're fast. They're on the edge. They set the edge really well. Ian Book versus DJ Uiagalelei. I mean, my money's on Uiagalelei right here. I think Ian Book is a serviceable quarterback, but he's not, all world. And neither is Uiagalelei yet, but he's got the skills. He's raw. He's a freshman. He will be. But then you look at running backs here. You got Kyron Williams for Notre Dame, and you got, Travis Etienne. I mean, you look at both categories, Clemson is still on paper better than Notre Dame. So therefore, I think that's going to translate with equal defenses. All being said and done, I think the more powerful Clemson offense is going to come out of here. And I think it's going to be far. I think the gap's going to be wider. I'd take the over on this one.
Wow, I still think it's going to be I still think it's going to be a low-scoring struggle because both defenses are that good.
Yeah.
And to me, Travis Etienne is the difference. My concern for Clemson's defense, though, is that secondary, because I think that front 7, when they get a pass rush, can kind of dictate the terms and that weakness doesn't seem like a weakness. But I thought Phil Jurkovec did a great job of exposing that secondary in the first half. Now the front seven got penetration, and I didn't think BC was as aggressive as they were in the first half, but I think a little bit had to do with Clemson's defense. But Ian Book, is he skilled enough to and will he have enough time to be able to expose that Clemson secondary? I don't think so. I just think that front seven at Clemson is that good and that NFL ready.
I agree. And then you look at what Boston College did with Zay Flowers and Long. I mean, they exposed some soft spots in that zone because once it got in that little flat and the linebackers could not cover, I think I agree with you, Wilkie. I think if you get past the front seven, Book's got some weapons in Notre Dame. I mean, if you can expose some of those soft spots in the zone, maybe an out and up, maybe a double move, something like that, maybe do a natural pick across. I mean, it might exploit some of that, but Ian Book's not going to have time to make those quick decisions because he's going to have 7 people in his face.
AP poll I was going to say AP poll really quickly, Wilkie. AP poll has Clemson still number 1, 4 first place votes ahead of Alabama. Notre Dame comes in at number 4.
And we got to be remiss to talk about Travis Etienne becoming the ACC all-time rushing leader there. So congrats for Etienne.
Yeah, overtakes Ted Brown, who was a great one at NC State.
Yeah.
And congrats to Travis Etienne.
But to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I'm saying, woo!
Staying in the ACC, how about Virginia over North Carolina? But that comeback by North Carolina, I tell you, Sam Howell tried to will that team to a victory. But J-Dub, to me, it kind of exposed a defensive issue that North Carolina has. One week they look great. The next week they're kind of disinterested.
I've said that all year. It depends on what team Mac Brown has show up that day. It's like they rise to the level of the rivalry. Like last week when they destroyed NC State, no one was surprised with that. Everyone up here is like, wait a minute, Virginia beat Carolina? They've got the weapons. Like you said, Sam Howell did his best to pull them back here. But when, you're giving up so many yards on the ground from Shane Simpson from Virginia, I mean, Carolina has got some defensive deficiencies, some serious deficiencies. And I think that going forward, I mean, they're lucky. And I say this very loosely. They're lucky to still be a top 25 team because, they got a lot of those wins early. And you look at a team like Virginia Tech that took them to the ropes. Virginia beat them late. It's like Virginia won every quarter yesterday except for the fourth quarter. I mean, Carolina's defense was on the field a long time, Nelson, and I don't think this bodes well for the Tar Heels going down the stretch.
No, and once again, updating the ideas in the top 25. The AP thought so poorly of North Carolina. Blew them out of the top 25. They were at 15, and now you're out the door. So,
not surprised.
After losing to a team that came in there at 1-4, and you lose 44-41, peace out, Boy Scout. Don't want to see you, and don't let it hit you on the way out the door.
Yeah, Mac Brown said he didn't see that coming.
Didn't see it coming there, J-Dub. Don't know what happened.
Well, let's move on to a conference that's really kind of licking its wounds right now and has been most weeks, and that's the Big 12. Oklahoma State and Texas. What a game. I mean, Texas played like they had to save Tom Herman's job, and they got it done. I love watching Sam Ehlinger play. I think I think he could really make it in the NFL just because he's a winner and can make plays. And he did that against Oklahoma State, despite Spencer Sanders throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Chuba Hubbard doesn't reach the 100-yard mark, but with Oklahoma State losing at home, that pretty much out any chance, I would think, of the Big 12 getting into the Final Four.
Absolutely. And we talked about on the X this week about how important a game this was. And I went on record saying I thought that Oklahoma State would run all over Texas because I didn't think Ehlinger had what was in him to do what he needed to do to win this game because of what we've seen with him week in and week out. And I stand completely corrected. I mean, he came in, controlled that offense, put him in a position to win, got that touchdown in overtime. I mean, I was surprised that Texas won just because Oklahoma State was kind of on a roll. But yeah, that was the Big 12's only shot to get a shot of the 4, and they laid an egg and they're done. Big 12 is like, they're out.
I honestly, this entire time, have not thought that the Big 12-10 was going to have a representative. I thought it was going to be 2 from the Southeastern Conference, Clemson, and probably Ohio State. I did not have any team from that conference in this discussion, and they would have had to really impress me to get into the discussion. And obviously, with them beating each other up, Oklahoma State drops from 6 to 14 in the AP poll after this loss. So, once again, it just reinforces that you'll be around on New Year's Day. You just won't be playing in the CFP.
Well, see, I had Oklahoma State in the conversation just because they've been playing all year, and we haven't seen Ohio State, right? Because they got in late. But, Spencer Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, Wilkie and I have been talking a bunch in the Stereo J-Dubs about the quarterback, running back tandems that are in college football right now, and they were playing really good football, and they still played good enough football to win yesterday, but they just didn't pull it out when it needed. And I think that was the statement game. That was the game. If the Big 12 was going to have a representative, that was the game that Oklahoma State had to win, because Notre Dame's going to lose to Clemson next week. That opening was there, and Mike Gundy laid an egg, and rightfully so. The Big 12 is going to be, sitting at home watching the championships with us in December, January.
Texas forced 4 Oklahoma State turnovers, 3 fumbles, and an interception that led to 18 points by Texas. So that, to me, was a telling stat of the game. That Texas defense has been maligned all year, giving up chunks of yardage and points, really stepped up to the occasion, especially with the takeaways against OSU.
Yeah, and you look at the losses that Texas has had to TCU and Oklahoma. I mean, they've won every other game. Well, they won the first 2 pretty convincingly. They beat Baylor, and now they beat Oklahoma State. I mean, they've beaten some pretty good teams. They've lost to some pretty good teams. I mean, they've been right there. I just question, did Ehlinger have what it takes to win the big game when the game is on the line? He proved me wrong yesterday.
Of course, Oklahoma State now, boy, they go into a brutal part of their schedule. Next week, they're at Kansas State, and then it's Bedlam in Norman after a week off. So, Oklahoma, timing is everything. Kansas State, timing's everything as well, too. They'll be angry when they take on the Cowboys in Manhattan, because they kind of blew their shot at maybe sneaking in or even getting a Big 12 title by I'll use J-Dub's term, laying an egg in Morgantown against West Virginia. West Virginia is just, that's a team on the rise right now. I didn't expect much out of the Mountaineers this year, but Neil Brown, to me, is an up-and-coming star in college coaching. And even with the limited amount of talent he has at West Virginia, and the entire refocusing over there, he's got the Mountaineers poised to challenge in the years to come.
Well, if you look at their schedule, I mean, their only 2 losses this year were to Texas Tech by 7 and to Oklahoma State by, looks like 14. So, I mean, they've put up a pretty decent season. You got Jarrett at quarterback. You've got Letty Brown at running back. I mean, they can be an explosive team. They're young. They're raw. And I think Neil's put together a pretty decent team. When I watched him play a couple weeks ago against Kansas, it's the first time I had to actually see him on camera. And I was like, this team has got some bright spots. They have some receivers that have got the dropsies. But, I mean, if they can just eke out, enough to win, the win against K-State is huge. That's a great shot in the arm confidence-wise to this Mountaineer team. And I'm not surprised where they are, because I knew they had some talent coming in. I think I'm fearful in the Big 12. I think they're gonna do some damage down the stretch, because they got Texas next week, and then they got TCU, Oklahoma, and Iowa State. So they've got some potential to make some do some damage going down.
Well, and for me, I think that we've all known what Neil Brown can do. Whether it's through Alabama high school ranks, and then being an assistant coach and a coordinator in Troy, and then working your way up the way that he has. And I think it's just taken him some time to purge the Dana Holgerson administration's players and bring in the ones that he wants to bring in. And I think you're seeing that transition now, and I think you're seeing the results. of bringing in your guys to be in your system, because you're going to have that clash of styles with the personnel that was there when you show up, with the guys that you want to bring in to try to move things forward. And I think that you're finally seeing things in Neil Brown's way of thinking, and you're getting the results that you see.
And we're talking about, confidence bumps, right? This win against K-State's huge for West Virginia. Into the Texas game at Texas next week, do you think the Texas win, this Saturday, what they did against Oklahoma State, are they going to have a lull, a false sense of security going into West Virginia? Or is that bump for Texas enough for them to be competitive at home against a tough Mountaineers team?
Well, I think the bump is enough because, look, I think they're playing for their coach's career right now at Texas.
Yeah.
And they checked one box already. Now you got to get it done against West Virginia. And, oh, by the way, JW mentioned they lost a top recruit who decommitted. So that is a negative against Tom Herman. But they've got to rack up some wins and to save his job because right now Texas is stale, and they've gotten. I mean, they're feeling good right now after beating Oklahoma State and Stillwater. That was huge. I think they can ride that momentum to West Virginia. West Virginia, they haven't proven to me yet they can win big games on the road. And that, to me, is a telltale sign as far as next level for West Virginia. Shall we move on?
Move on to the Big Ten.
Sure, let's do it.
And before we state the obvious, let's again, let's just say the Big Ten, they waited so long to start up, and now they're giving us some entertainment. Maryland is 1-1, and Minnesota is 0-2. And they beat the Gophers in overtime Friday night. There were some that believed Minnesota could be that team in the championship game. And, boy, that was a bad prediction right there. But little brother Talia Tagovailoa with an outstanding game with the game-winning touchdown. And we had two outstanding running backs. I think all three of us are going to see on Sunday.
That's Cobbs in motion. It's Tagovailoa circling out of the pocket again and sprinting down the sideline. He's got Funk in front of him and a touchdown.
Jake Funk bringing the funk for the Terps with 221 yards.
Was he bringing both the noise and the funk, or was it just the funk?
He brought the noise. He brought the funk. He brought the dance steps. And then Mohamed Ibrahim going for also over 200 yards rushing. What a great running back. An old style Big Ten type of game in College Park, Maryland. But the Terps are 1-1. I didn't think we'd see that.
And Wilkie, we talked about on the X this week, coming about how the Terps went all the way to Evanston, Illinois, just to kick a field goal last week. And, I didn't know if Tagovailoa would have what kind of bounce back game he had. And I told you Ibrahim was one of these backs that I knew was a traditional Golden Gopher who's going to be like that Minnesota, Wisconsin, in your face, run down your throat type of a running back. But wow, I mean, between Tagovailoa and Funk, I mean, Maryland really impressed me Friday night. And the fact they that missed PAT, I wonder what kind of extras that kicker is going to be running for Minnesota this week. But
second heartbreaking loss in a row.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Indiana's 2-0, by the way, guys. They beat the other surprise team.
See what happens when you show up on the X?
Exactly. It is the X, and we give you guys a bump. But
we'll give you a little bit of extra.
Oh no. No! And this is where Phil comes in and edits something and drops it.
Yeah, that's right. That'll be up to him. First of all, Michigan State.
Mel Tucker just bought himself 10 years in East Lansing.
The Paul Bunyan Trophy.
The Paul Bunyan Trophy stays in East Lansing. I tell you, Jim Harbaugh's record against his rivals is just atrocious. And I'm starting to read that the bloom has really come off the rose.
Harbaugh is the most overrated coach I've ever seen in my entire life. I just had to drop that in there. Wow. I mean, these are the games you have to win. You're brought into Michigan to win the Michigan State game. This is the Michigan State and Ohio State are the two you have to win. And he's not been doing it.
No, I think he's done it once in his 6 years. I mean, but hats off to Mel Tucker. I mean, if you guys saw it after the game, how emotional he was. Obviously, losing to Rutgers the week before.
I was going to say, I'd be emotional too after losing to Rutgers and beating Michigan.
Down and Mel Tucker gets a huge win. I got to tell you what a first win.
But that surprised me because I thought Michigan was. And I guess they are fool's gold. I thought they'd finally got the players in place. They got a quarterback in place, and it just wasn't to be.
And hats off to Ricky White for the Spartans with 8 catches for almost 200 yards and a touchdown. So I mean, Lombardi was finding him all over the place yesterday.
Love that name, Rocky Lombardi.
Rocky Lombardi, hello.
But that surprised me because I thought Michigan was, and I guess they are fool's gold. I thought they'd finally got the players in place. They got a quarterback in place, and it just wasn't to be.
And hats off to Ricky White for the Spartans with 8 catches for almost 200 yards and a touchdown. So I mean, Lombardi was finding him all over the place yesterday.
Love that name, Rocky Lombardi.
Rocky Lombardi, hello.
And of course, the obvious Ohio State over Penn State. Penn State now 0-2 to start off the season. Boy, I did not expect that from the Nittany Lions. And I think there's some deep soul searching going on. Justin Fields adding to his Heisman Trophy campaign with 4 touchdowns. So Ohio State is just rolling right now.
And I was watching that game yesterday going, how stupid is Kirby Smart? Watching Justin Fields completely destroy a team like Penn State, but you start Jake Fromm over Justin Fields? I just don't understand that. Because Justin Fields right now is playing with a man with a chip on his shoulder. He's already 3, 4, 5 games behind Trevor Lawrence and trying to make the Heisman voters say, hey, look at me. Dude is just ripping defenses to shreds. And to think what he could have done in the SEC East had he played, he come in as a 3rd down, Wildcat quarterback. I just don't get it. Kid's got talent.
It's just kind of there. Just putting it out there for you a little bit. When you go, what was it, 19? Was it 18 or 19 in a row to start, and you finished 28 of 34 for 318 and 4? I mean, it's. You've talked about great names so far with Rocky Lombardi. How about Master Teague? I feel like I should do something like this. Master Teague. And he's Master Teague, not the first or the second, but he's version 3.0. So it's Master version 3.0. So I guess he's been updated a couple of times. But
Master on the ground.
Yeah, he's the triple master.
Yeah, he's so Master 3.0 goes for 23 and $110. So I think, and I'm going to stick with it. I don't see anything changing. Ohio State stays at number 3 in the AP poll. I'm still looking at Clemson, Alabama, SEC 2, and Ohio State. I really am.
I mean, there was some question with the Clemson struggle win over BC if Alabama would leapfrog Clemson there. I still don't think there's enough in Tuscaloosa to jump them right now because a win is still a win, especially considering you're down on your backup quarterback. I think the AP is looking at that as well. But I still think Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State's 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Ohio State. I mean, Notre Dame is the outside 4, but I don't think they're even on the same planet as 1, 2, and 3.
No.
Well, you said Alabama didn't leapfrog over Clemson, but they leapfrogged and mauled and destroyed Mississippi State.
Not a mental image I was going to associate with this particular game, sir.
Guys, of course, back in week 1 when the SEC season started, we kind of circled that game because, we saw what Mike Leach did against LSU, his offense. Guys, since they put up 44 points against LSU, they've only put up 23 points since, including one game that ended in a safety against Kentucky and then getting shut out by Alabama. Man, have the mighty really falling in Starkville, but Alabama just continues to roll.
I'm not see here's where as a player I'm going to come in and say I don't think it's anything that Mississippi State's doing wrong. That first game against LSU, there was 0 tape, 0 film on Costello, on the air raid for Leach in a Mississippi State uniform. Since then, I know as a player, we watch film after film after film after film, tendencies and balances and shifts and things. SEC is a very, very good conference. This isn't the Pac-12 anymore, right? So, I mean, you can do whatever you want to do at Washington State. You can't get away with that here in the SEC. You got to be unpredictable, which is what he should be. And
Mike Leach is so stubborn. He's like Paul Johnson. He's not going to change. And we're going to rush 3 and drop 7. And the thing is, Alabama has got athletes in that defensive with the linebackers and defensive secondary that Mike Leach has never seen, even when they played Southern Cal. So you got to adjust somehow.
And that's my thing. That's why Mississippi State is doing poorly, because they haven't adjusted, and SEC defensive coordinators are amazingly good at looking at film, looking at tendencies. And then you look at Alabama. There are some people that said that when Jalen Waddle went down last week, that they were going to lose a step.
Worst narrative ever. Oh my God, he's going to replace Jalen. Who do you think's going to replace Jalen Waddle? Another 5-star.
You look at Devontae Smith. I think Devontae Smith is a better receiver than Waddle, and this is his next man up philosophy. You saw what he did on Saturday. Alabama is not going to falter by the unfortunate injury to Jalen Waddle. We wish him well. No question. But Devontae Smith showed that they're going to keep right on rolling, and Mac Jones is going to find them. I mean, don't think that a program school like Alabama losing one person is not afraid to do the next man up scenario.
Yeah, Devontae Smith goes for 11 and 203 yesterday. KJ Costello, I don't know if you guys saw it, took a knee to the head. And only went 4 of 11 for 16 yards. Total offense on the day for Mississippi State, 200 net yards of total offense going up against Alabama. Will Rogers came in through for 147. And they only rushed for 37 yards. 32 of that went to Carver Atlanta's Jaquavius Marks.
Yeah. I didn't watch the post-game presser from the Pirate either. Should have.
You're not going to be successful in the SEC only giving 200 net yards total. You won't even beat Tennessee or Vanderbilt.
Now, the three of us have vested interest in the SEC. Of course, J-Dub likes Tennessee, and they were off.
Yes, we didn't lose.
I'm an Arkansas Razorback guy, and great effort against Texas A&M. But I tell you, Texas A&M has gotten so much better offensively and defensively. Kellen Mond is really locked in right now, and they were just too good for Arkansas. Much more talented team out there. And first time they had played in College Station since '91, which was what.
Almost 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah, 29 years ago.
That's the year I graduated from high school.
Well, I was actually at that game in College Station. And then, Nelson, your better halves, Auburn Tigers, just whoop up on LSU. And
what's happening in Redskins? I
know. That was I mean, that is Bo Pelini going to survive?
No.
No, there are some that are saying that Coach O is on the hot seat now. Even you're coming off the year winning a national championship. Now they're just 2-3 overall, 2-3 in the conference. And it's like, I don't think he's in jeopardy. But Bo Pelini better have his resume done stacked, because I'm not sure he'll survive the season.
I mean, you look at the losses, and they've given up 44, 45, and 48 in 3 games this year. And it was a great breakdown that the guys over at SEC Network had with Roman Harper and Gene Chizik. They were noticing things with the secondary, and specifically having to do with spacing, angles, and communication.
Yes.
And you weren't seeing a lot of that when you'd have stack or offset or bunch formations. And there was one particular touchdown that was basically it was a rub route. And the 2 defenders for LSU were standing next to each other. They weren't stacked. They weren't staggered. So, if you're looking from the high camera and you see the touchdown reception where there's a rub route and the inside receiver rubs, works his way to the outside. Basically, it's a pick, but they call it a rub route. If you're not going to get a flag on it, it's a rub route. If you get a flag, it's a pick. But the inside receiver rubs to the outside, and because the 2 defenders that were in the man coverage right there had tight man coverage. They both clattered into each other, canceled each other out, created the opening, which was a touchdown. So a lot of the analysis, and this would be your required viewing if you haven't had the chance to see it, was from a SEC football final on Saturday night, where you had Roman Harper and Gene Chizik analyzing what's been going on. So it's a lack of communication, seemingly a lack of understanding about your plays, and just basic formational understandings for a very, very young team. Remember, they graduated a boatload of folks, and there's a lot of freshmen that are out there playing right now. So it's a bunch of different factors that are involved. But the biggest one seems to be on defense, just basic communication out there on the field among the players themselves that's creating an Anthony Schwartz 91-yard touchdown, where if you can just get some piece of separation, it ends up a bit of a lost assignment. There's 5 yards of spacing, and when someone can run a 10-7-100 and you just throw the ball up there, Schwartz is going to get it and go. So, you had Bo Nix throw for 303. He was their leading rusher yesterday. Once again, it reinforced what you're seeing for the Auburn running game, with Sean Shivers being the guy who's working the outside. Tank Bigsby right now, who for me is a SEC Freshman of the Year contender. He's the guy who's your guy between the tackles. So you've got outside, you've got inside, you've got speed with Schwartz, and you're also letting Bo Nix tuck and run a little more. And so I think that Chad Morris has been adapting what he's been seeing over the last handful of weeks with that offense.
And I agree with you. One of the things I learned and was beat into my head as a player is that football at this level is 10% physical, 90% mental. Meaning that you have to do the little things and have the fundamentals. And like Nelson was saying, know that when you're stacked as a DB, you can't be parallel because you'll get picked off. You have to stack in order to prevent the rub routes. And these things are things you can teach. And I think Bo Pelini is being deficient and kind of taking it through maybe with the rest of his defensive staff. But these are things that you're going to have to learn the hard way. And sometimes you have to take your lumps in your quote unquote rebuilding year to figure these things out. But man, Pelini's not doing himself any favors. No. Especially when you have a quarterback's your leading rusher. That means you're not setting the edge on defense. And you've got your linebackers aren't scraping, you're not filling holes, you don't have your right keys. Things are just not happening in Red Stick.
Well, if you love defensive football, you love Georgia and Kentucky. 14-3.
Okay, well, here, let me go ahead and present an alternate theory, and if either of you want to wind up the black helicopter in the hangar while I'm doing this, feel free.
Get to the chopper.
Why, if you think you're superior and you know that you're going to be able to clamp down on Kentucky defensively,
clap your hands.
Why knowing that the Florida game is the next one on your schedule, why should you really show a whole heck of a lot offensively if you know you're going to win this game and get out of there in one piece to get you ready for Florida? So why should you show a whole lot of bells and whistles if you can be as vanilla as possible, not really give Florida anything else on film that you haven't seen, and just get out of there with a win regardless of what the number was?
That would imply that Kirby Smart was an intelligent coach. I mean, there's always that joke that Kirby's going to Kirby, like against Tennessee, 2 horrible fourth down calls. He's always going to do that against the big games. But I kind of see your point, Nelson, about, again, looking ahead, do what you need to do to win this game, but hold something back in the playbook. Now, the mailman didn't look very good yesterday, whether you're holding back or not, but Stetson Bennett with 9 of 13 with 2 interceptions. I mean, Zamir White still did his thing on the ground.
Okay.
That was about it.
So then let me present another theory with those 2 picks. One, I would say that the first interception, you had too much of a pass rush coming straight at the lineman, and the lineman ended up getting backed into Stetson to not give him enough room to come over the top.
Correct.
And on the second one, it looked like his freshman receiver stopped running his routes. Stet was throwing to a spot, and it ended up being where the receiver was supposed to be, but the defensive back was there when the receiver was not. So I wouldn't necessarily hang those 2 picks on Stet.
Well, I agree that they're, I guess, less his fault. But if you're going to do just the bare minimum to win against a Kentucky who's got a pretty decent defense, a scoring defense at that, and you give 2 picks and they're not doing enough to get your team. If Zamir White had a bad day, I mean, Kentucky could have turned that around. So I think that's a risky play, but I think in a game where, a game of inches is a lot, I can see your point that might be what could have happened. I just don't think it was. I think this was shows how good Kentucky's defense really is on paper. Yeah, and they were pretty fast yesterday, and got in the passing lanes. They challenged Stet a whole bunch, but they need to learn how to tackle Zamir White. I mean, if they can't, they're not going to be competitive in the SEC East if you can't freaking tackle.
Well, I mean, Zamir White is a special running back, so it's hard for anybody to tackle him. And had he not had the game that he had, we're looking at a 3-0 Kentucky win. To be honest with you, but Kentucky's offensively challenged. If they had and they made the adjustment to Joey Gatewood, and it still didn't really muster any kind of offense for the Wildcats, though they were going against that Georgia defense that is just fundamentally sound and phenomenal.
Yes, you look at Gatewood's numbers yesterday through the air; it was 3.6 yards per passing attempt. 15 to 25 for 91 yards passing. And we mentioned how Mississippi State only had 200 net yards total offense. Kentucky wasn't that far behind them, or in front of them, I guess. 229 in net yesterday going up against Georgia, who ended up on the day with 346 by the end of it all.
So, I mean, Alabama exploited Georgia's defense for what it is. I mean, I think you got a pro-style offense versus a pro-style defense. I think Georgia's defense is going to be fine. I think the Kyle show is going to give them all a run for their money next week. And if Stet can't do something more on offense to balance out Zamir White, it's going to get ugly.
All right. Well, then let me present this theory as we're probably heading into our discussions about Florida and Missouri. I think first and foremost, we've got to talk about suspensions and fines.
Florida needs to get out of here. They got a big game next week against Georgia, and I think that's what Dan Mullen was trying to do, is prevent any one of his players from doing something stupid. This is getting ugly. There's punches being thrown.
Yeah.
There's a fighting chance that some people are going to not be playing on Saturday. Too soon? Too soon?
I feel like David Caruso should just come in right now.
I mean, that was the weirdest way to end a half. Now, I will have to say, as a player, you do a cheap shot on my quarterback, I'm going to be in your face. So I don't necessarily discount what Florida did. I don't like the melee. I don't like the punches.
But the fighting didn't start until Dan Mullen got in the pile.
True. Okay. Right. Good point. Good point.
It was pushing and shoving and this and that and argy-bargy, and it's like, oh, I'm mad, and it's pushing back and forth until Dan Mullen came off the sidelines, starts chasing after the head linesman and is almost pushing him from behind to get his attention. Then he turns and is trying to get in the referee's face. Then he gets in the pile. That's when you start to see punches getting thrown, and then it just gets out of control at that point.
Then
let's just say that's when all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
If you're looking at suspensions, I mean, could the SEC do anything to Dan Mullen for that?
They damn well better. They damn well better.
I think they should at least look at a fine maybe or something.
Yeah,
because
I
agree with you.
A fine. I don't think they'll suspend him for the game.
Mullen stirred the pot on that one. I will agree with that.
I think that if Lane Kiffin is going to get fined $25,000 for tweets, then by comparison, Dan Mullen ought to really sit there and figure out what's in the piggy bank, because if the SEC office in Birmingham is going to go after Lane Kiffin the way they went after Lane Kiffin, I think that proportionally, Dan Mullen might get something historic.
Then let me ask you this. Since you've been a big fan of your conspiracy theories this week.
Sure.
If, let's say, the SEC comes up and suspends Dan Mullen for Saturday's game.
Good.
What does that do for the world's largest cocktail party?
Oh, I'm sure it fires up the University of Florida, us against the world. Pick your cliches. They suspended our coach. He can't be on the sidelines. He can't be in the building. We're going to go in there and we're going to be mad. Okay, great, fine, whatever.
I mean, like I said, as a player, I'm all for defending your quarterback. I'm all for. Because, I mean, there are some people that say that's what Dallas should have done last week when
they didn't.
So after Andy Dalton got knocked out of the game. But, that shows that there's a lack of passion on that sidelines.
Yeah.
But when you've got a quarterback that's doing well and he's successful and someone takes a cheap shot, you best believe I'm going to be in your face. I'm not going to throw a swing at you. So I still fault Dan Mullen for that. But watching that was almost surreal as that ended the first half yesterday. I'm like, this is just odd because you don't see that kind of fire coming out of Missouri very often.
You would have choice words. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, there would be colorful metaphors. And for me,
colorful language, yes.
What I thought was equally disrespectful was Dan Mullen coming into the post-game press conference dressed as Darth Vader. I'm like, what in the blue hell is that?
Still Halloween, baby.
It's Dan Mullen.
And I, and once again, I will stipulate, being the ACC or, one of the ACCers on this show and mortal enemy to the University of South Georgia Gainesville campus, that I thought that, first off, Mullen going out there and egging on the fighting, I thought that was strike one for me. Strike two, when he leaves and goes down the tunnel, comes back in, and then tries to treat it like he's Hulk Hogan and tries to gin up the crowd to get them fired up all over again. That to me was strike two. And then post game, when he comes in like Darth Vader, I'm like, this is a caricature now. I just thought that it was just ridiculous the way that Dan Mullen handled himself. And then if you watch the post-game interview on SEC Network, he tried to have a boatload of revisionist history about the event in and of itself. So that might be a required viewing part two, is his post-game presser. Yep. I mean,
something tells me there's going to be a test at the end of this of this podcast, or maybe at the College Football X. Who knows?
The lunatics are running the asylum.
Exactly. Guys, I just looked at the clock. We need to take a break. When we come back, the three Johns No Waiting are going to kind of freestyle a little bit about college football. But I want to talk about a team that the member of our crew that's absent has fallen in love with, and a possibility with the Bearcats. We'll do that when we come back. You're listening and watching the review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
The OSG app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Download the OSG app today.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Hey, man, there's some people out there with that very same sentiment. Boy, Ford out of the pack. Jerome, see ya.
And welcome back to the review. Three Johns No Waiting this week. John Wilkerson, John Wood, John Nelson, and a plumber to be named later. Phil Canner can't make it this week. So you get us.
So if you hear any odd insert sound effects or side sound bites, that's Phil in post-production. Thank you.
That's Phil making his point known. He's not here in person, but will definitely be here in spirit.
In post, yes.
We'll fix it in post, especially my puns, right?
Okay, so earlier we talked about Clemson and Notre Dame and their victories, and we previewed a little bit about that game in South Bend next week. The Cincinnati Bearcats are what, 7th, 6th ranked right now? I haven't seen the new AP poll yet.
The new poll has them at number 6 in the AP.
All right, so now they're number 6, so they jumped a spot. So this could be a residual effect to the outcome of that game. Whoever wins and loses the Clemson Notre Dame game, and assuming it is Notre Dame, could the Bearcats, who beat Memphis 49-10 in Cincy last week or yesterday or Saturday, could the Bearcats kind of leapfrog into the 4 spot?
I don't think they leapfrog into the 4. I think they hover, and I think that depending on the margin of Clemson and Notre Dame, if Notre Dame is the team that loses since they're the closest in proximity to Cincinnati in the AP, how far down does Notre Dame go? If it's a blowout, they're going to plummet. Then Cincinnati just kind of goes up that one extra spot. They end up at number 5. And they're kind of hanging out, waiting for the SEC championship game if they continue to run the table and do what they're supposed to do. And then they could be the one that puts the interesting liquid into the punch bowl, J-Dub, as we get toward the end of the season.
Yeah, you look at the rest of the Bearcat schedule. They have Houston next week, then ECU, Central Florida, Temple, and Tulsa. They have the potential to run the entire table and finish the year undefeated because there's nobody that scares me on that list. Maybe UCF of old, but UCF this year is not UCF of old. Temple and Tulsa does. I mean, I honestly think if they go undefeated, they still don't make it into the 4 unless some major shift happens up top.
Well, obviously, for Cincinnati, their last 3 games are on the road at UCF, at Temple, at Tulsa. And Tulsa's really the challenger this year because I believe they're still unbeaten in the conference, and they've been the surprise. But not only that, J-Dub, but they've got to put up like 55, 60 points against a team like Houston that has a little bit of a reputation among the national college football writers and so forth. East Carolina a little bit because, they've had some sneaky upsets in the past, so they're known commodities. Obviously UCF. If, I look at it this way, they've got to run up scores now because they don't have a Power 5 on their schedule. And they did that against Memphis. I mean, Memphis is they're all down, but again, they're a known commodity. So if they can average 55 to 60 points, I think that gives them a chance to at least sneak in. But you're right. Some strange things have got to happen. I think it helps that Clemson and Notre Dame are going to play each other. And if they can rack up 55, 60, 65 points against Houston and do it impressively, I still think they have a chance.
But you look at the tandem in Cincinnati. You got Ritter and Dokes, right? Desmond Ritter is actually a pretty decent quarterback, right? He's really got almost 1,000 yards this year. He's got a 65% completion rate. He's a second leading rusher. He's got 8.8 yards per rush this year. So I think Ritter and Dokes are a great 1-2 punch. And I think they have the ability to both run the table and run up the points to secure that spot to say, look, we deserve to be in the top 6. Like I said, unless there's an earth-shattering loss to an Ohio State or to an Alabama, I still think they're going to be from an American person, basically standing at the window looking into the playoff. I just don't think they're going to get there.
No, I think that they'll be part of the New Year's Bowls. It'll be interesting to see where they fit into it. The Houston game for me, this is obviously a Dana Holgorsen Houston team that is in transition right now, trying to get the players in there. We talked about Neil Brown at West Virginia going to the next step in the Dana Holgorsen coaching resume. Right now, Dana's trying to get in his players at Houston and try to purge previous administrations. They only put up 21 points. For an offense that is supposed to be all that and the entire chip aisle, not just the bag of chips, but the entire chip aisle, the way that Dana is supposed to be this Red Bull-based offensive guru, for them to only put up 21 means to me that there's some issues right now in the transition and the players, getting the players that Dana wants at Houston, and only being able to put up half the number that UCF did, considering the total going in, I want to say was 82 going into that particular game. There was a lot of promise put on Houston, and they haven't shown it so far this year.
Yeah, and Houston's 2-2 overall. They've beaten Tulane and Navy, and they've lost to BYU and to Central Florida. I mean, I still think that team's in a rebuild. I don't think they've completely bought into Holgorsen's plan yet. You haven't seen Houston play the style that they can, or at least on paper they can. And when you, like I said, when you only put up 21 points against UCF, whose defense isn't earth-shattering either, there's something else going on wrong there. but I still think that they're not going to do very well next week. I think Cincinnati's gonna rip them off.
And
in my personal opinion.
And of course, the other team in the group of 5 that is impressing people is from a conference that we've been impressed with since day one, and that's the Sun Belt in Coastal Carolina, putting up 51 against Georgia State in a shutout.
Yeah.
And John has got 2 required viewing things for you. I got a required reading for you because John Feinstein wrote in a column on Coastal Carolina that appeared on the Washington Post that was outstanding. So if you want a little knowledge on Coastal, read that. And that is a program right now that is on a roll. I expect the Chanticleers to run the table for the year. What's disappointing, however, guys, is they got no shot. They'll maybe get a New Year's Six bowl, but I still think they've got to run the table and they've got to put up the kind of points that I said that Cincinnati needs to get to that point. And with South Alabama, Troy, App State, Texas State, and Liberty still on the schedule. By the way, if they can run up some points against App State, which they have at home, and they are a brand name, and Liberty, which is
Liberty's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough out for them, but that game's at home too. So they've got 2 of their biggies on the teal turf, and but they've got to do that. They've got to run the table, and they've got to win big to get that kind of recognition.
I mean, I've been spouting the praises for the Chanticleers all season. They sucked last year. I mean, they came in and I don't know what happened in the offseason, what kind of training program or regimen they put in there, but Grayson McCall and CJ Marable are a great 1-2 punch for the Chanticleers. I've been so impressed. I've got to see them play a couple times this year, once against my Fighting Camels, which we won't talk about, but they are just playing lights out football this year, and they haven't taken their foot off the gas. They don't care who they play. They are running their offense, and they are putting up serious points on everybody this year. And Georgia Southern didn't see it coming this week.
Right now, Coastal's at 15. Coastal is at 15 right now in the AP poll.
All right, they got a bullet, John. Wow. And John, they played in Coastal Carolina played in our backyard yesterday, and we didn't go to the game. What were we thinking?
But the thing is, we've already had Coastal on the X this year, so we have definitely shown what Coastal can be. But the fact that they held Georgia State to an absolute goose egg, I think, is just as important as putting 51 on the board. But once again, you mentioned teams now Cincinnati having to do that. Same thing with Coastal. Same thing with Marshall at 16. Same thing with Boise at 21. Same thing with Liberty at 25. They're going to have to put up these large numbers as they continue to go here, as the season continues to funnel its way toward the end of whatever regular season it's going to look like. But those teams in the top 25, if they're going to get into the top 16 and be a part of that New Year's discussion, they're going to have to put up these big numbers. But I'm looking forward to Coastal and Liberty at the end of the regular season.
And you mentioned, go ahead, John.
I said, for me, the turning point for me was that game on Wednesday, October 14th against the Raging Cajuns. I think, Coastal Carolina came to play that game, and they proved on a national night that they deserve to be where they are. Exactly. And the Raging Cajuns are a good football team. They eked out a win, but hey, a dub's a dub, man.
Exactly. And you mentioned Boise State. They defeated the Air Force in Colorado Springs 49-30. And I think the advantage Boise State and Cincinnati have, unfortunately, over Coastal Carolina is that they are kind of a brand name. Boise State's been doing it since the BCS era when they snuck in, and everybody remembers the game against Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, and that's still burned in people's memories. And Cincinnati, they've been to the BCS before, and they didn't do so well against Florida, but with Tim Tebow, but we kind of expected that. Yep. But they've been there, and they've still kind of burned in the memory of some college football fans as deserving to be up there. That's where I think Coastal's got some work to do, although they're starting to get there. They've got our attention. Hey, that's half the battle right there.
But I can tell you right now that's unfair to the Sun Belt. I mean, I understand that Boise State is a known commodity with the Mountain West. I understand that their fans travel. I understand that. And I've always hated that, I guess, the stigma the smaller conferences have. I mean, working with the Big South and Campbell and just watching, and actually before that with the Pioneer League, and how some of these smaller conferences in like the Fun Belt, the American, aren't given the credit they deserve. I mean, you put a Boise State. I'd love to see Boise State play Coastal, because I think it would not turn out well for the Mountain West. I think that we need to. What was that year that Tulane went undefeated and got
98 national champions, 1998.
Yeah. So I think that's
Tommy
where
Bowden's last year.
And I think that's where the known commodity thing really frustrates me and kind of tweaks my heart, because teams should be looked at for the merit.
Careful what you're tweaking there, J-Dub. Careful.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm not in the John anymore. But, I think that it's unfair to Coastal. You look at the body of work, man, Coastal deserves a shot. Coastal deserves a shot. And they won't get.
We only got a few minutes left, but a couple of things I wanted to mention as we turn our attention to the Mountain West. San Jose State's 2-0. John, I think you had a little bit to do with that victory over New Mexico, 38-21 on Saturday, since the college football acts and how it catapults teams. I think you have a little.
Justin Allegri, it was good to catch up with the voice of the San Jose State Spartans. It was good to get his lay of the land going into that game. So yes, I think that the X should take full credit for all of the guests and how well they do in subsequent games.
With the exception of we had Neil Price to come on from Mississippi State.
Well,
so
it doesn't work for everybody. That's you.
That's my fault. Sorry, I don't have the mojo going.
But I think I figured it out. I think that when the X has guests on it from Go Fives, we do well with our Go Five guests. It's the Power Five guests on the X that have the problems.
There you go. So it wasn't my fault.
No.
And I take credit for helping Indiana over Rutgers.
Okay, as you should.
Don Fisher may feel a little different, but
how about the Wolfpack? The Wolfpack's 2-0. Nevada.
Yeah, Nevada winning the state title in Nevada, beating the Rebels in Las Vegas. Wow, nice.
And we've got a full Maction Wednesday, by the way.
Oh, Maction Wednesday. That's right. The MAC starts up and the Pac-12 starts up next week. I love the fact that Southern Cal and Arizona State are playing at the Coliseum at 9 a.m.
That's a you problem.
That's just insane. Yep.
That's a you problem.
As a guy who used to do 9 a.m. football games on the high school level, I can relate.
I will have to say, when I was living on the West Coast, it was really cool to have those games at 9 o'clock in the morning, or having Monday Night Football at like 5 o'clock at night. It was great, but East Coast, not so much.
Yeah, I just remember when I lived out West and my roommates thought I was crazy. I was getting up at 9 a.m. to watch an SEC game, a Vanderbilt, Georgia game, and they couldn't understand why. Well, when you come from the Southern football culture, you're all in.
Yep.
Guys, any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
BYU and Boise, Friday night, the two of the top 25 teams right there. BYU and Boise, 9:45 Eastern on Friday night. Looking forward to that one too.
I'm just looking forward to this week, Wilkie, because you and I are shouldn't be friends this week, because don't the Volunteers go into Fayetteville to face your Razorbacks?
I believe so. Let me double check on that. But
because that means we're not going to be talking. We're not going to be friends next week, because one of us is going to lose.
Okay, well, just on Saturday. Just on Saturday. Okay, we'll wolf at each other on the Stereo J-Dubs this week. That'll be our one subject we'll talk about. Hogs and Vols in Fayetteville. So
7:30 Saturday night.
I'm looking forward to that one.
The Seminoles come back this week, don't they too, John?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not really going to discuss that particular element of the schedule. Pitt at 3 and 4 comes to Tallahassee, 4 o'clock Eastern time kick on the ACC network. So Pitt at 3 and 4, Florida State at 2 and 4. Mike Norvell should not be our coach.
Second half surge for the Seminoles.
Careful. Careful. I don't want to know about surges, sir.
So if you have an opinion about Florida State, Arkansas, Tennessee, or any of your favorite college football team, please get on our Twitter page at OSG Sports and give us your opinion on anything with college football or what we said. We'd love to hear from you. And if we do read your tweet on the College Football X or the review,
or
John,
Georgia Southern, got to bring Phil back in here if you have anything.
Yeah.
Georgia Southern.
There's a bunch of hats behind John, and he'll throw you one in the mail. Probably has some grime on it, but you can always just display it. Yeah. And of course, we've got our Facebook page at OSG Sports, the onlinesportsguys.com, and plus our app on your Android or iPhone at OSG Sports. Please download that if you haven't. Listen to some of our podcasts. And don't forget, we got the College Football X coming up. As soon as we're done recording this, we're going to plan out the College Football X, so stay tuned for that. Should be fun listen. So, for the three Johns, no waiting. For John Nelson, John Wood, I'm John Wilkerson. We appreciate you joining us. Listen to us on the College Football X, and have a great week.